I believe there was a turning point made. And I think that turning point was made by the clergy, the activists, the volunteers, and the men and women of law enforcement who partnered together to make a difference. But also those citizens who took heed to what we talked about last night, not allowing the criminals to mass themselves in a peaceful protest. They protested early and they went home early, and allowed us a better visual look of those criminals and agitators that are roaming the streets of Florida for their own agenda.
And that's the gentleman who's in charge of discipline, if you will, or controlling the situation in Ferguson, Missouri, the Chief Ron Johnson there. But Seth Richardson is a contributor with the Daily Caller, and he's on the ground. And Seth, there in Ferguson, Missouri. Seth, how is the situation, and how was it overnight?
Overnight, it was a little strange. It started off very calm. Protests went on all day yesterday, and no real issue, no real confrontation with police. And as I started to disperse at night, there became a little bit of a confrontation. 47 people arrested, so that was more arrests than the previous night, which was described as one of the most violent nights before. So it's all around been a little bit of a strange kind of scenario going on down here.
It's almost like, by his description, the locals went home to bed. They'd had enough of the protesting, and the people that were not from Ferguson stayed out later, and those are the ones that were arrested. Is that the case? And how many people are not from Ferguson?
I can't really say how many people aren't from Ferguson. From the people that I've talked to, most of the protesters down there are from Ferguson. There are some people who come in. I've talked to people from Oakland, California, Chicago, New York, quite, all over the place. It's really hard to put any kind of number on it, but I would say the majority of people are from Ferguson. As to the people last night and who stayed over and who didn't, I can't really say myself. Since most people were there all day, it wasn't like they just kind of came out of the woodwork, at least not that I could notice. They were there protesting all day and simply seemed like they didn't want to go home at that time.
Okay, in the crowd that you're describing from Ferguson, then, is this a racial situation? Is the crowd majority or entirely black, or are there some whites? Could it be an evolving class struggle?
There's a lot of moving parts to this. I think to classify it as just a race struggle would be doing a disservice to what is going on down there. The crowd itself, the protesters, it's a mix. It's a majority black, but there's a heavy mix of all different kinds of race and class type there as well. Basically, what you have is these people who feel like they've been oppressed by a police force, and it's become sort of endemic to them. So they're taking to the streets and protesting that, and I think it's kind of easy to put it into just a race struggle, but I think it's more than that.
Describe for me, if you could, the law enforcement. Is it primarily police that are heavily armed, or is there a military component to this that is making the arrests?
From what I've seen, mainly it is police who are making all the arrests. There were some National Guard there last night, I believe, full decked out camo that made some arrests as well. I've been here 3 days myself, and since I've been here, mostly police have been making the arrests.
I've got to take a quick break, Seth, but I do want to talk about Eric Holder, the Attorney General, and expectations on his arrival, but we'll be right back to you.
Okay.
This is about Trayvon Martin. This is about Jordan Davis, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Ezell Brown, who was shot in L.A. a couple days ago. Today in St. Louis, I think you said a couple blocks away, another African-American man was shot and killed today. They said he had a knife. But I just think there's a war on the black male, and it's tearing the country apart, in my opinion.
Spike Lee with the opinion that there's a war on the black male, and I wonder if that sentiment is being expressed in the streets of Ferguson. Seth Richardson is still with us. He's from the Daily Caller. Seth, do you hear that in conversation with people?
I think war might be a little bit too strong of a word. I think there's definitely a feeling of some kind of oppression and, like we talked about earlier, a bit of a class disparity going on there. And, these people just feel like, most of the protesters feel like they've been put down, as a race for too long or as a class for too long. And I think it's just finally come to a head. You hear these stories, and I think it gets perpetuated, and, they just kind of think that.
Wow. Seth, early in this story, there was autopsy after autopsy and third autopsy being put forward. Now you hear that the Attorney General, Eric Holder, is going to be coming to Ferguson. What's his role, do you think?
I can't really describe anything as far as strategy, but if I had to guess, I would say that it's supposed to be more of a, kind of a calming presence, sort of, hey, look, we're concerned about this. And I'm not saying they're not concerned, but I think it's a show of support from, the Obama administration and just everybody in general. Like, hey, we're taking this seriously. We don't want you to think we're not.
Is it the case that we might see charges against Darren Wilson?
I couldn't speculate to that. I can only talk about what I've seen on the ground, really.
Yeah, and as we understand it, there seems to be, from media reports at least, more people coming forward, not defending, but reasserting what the police officer had to say in testimony in terms of the timeline of what happened. Are people satisfied that the timeline has been appropriately explored?
Well, one of the things I was talking to residents about yesterday, what way could this sort of be solved? And one of the things that they're upset about is they have not heard anything from the officer himself yet. It's been, 10 days now, and they haven't heard a single thing from the officer. The grand jury is convening today. I would guess that the officer is going to testify on his behalf. So we'll kind of see how that plays out.
Yeah, so they're anxious to hear what happened on that side. Do they talk a lot about Michael Brown himself? I mean, this, by all accounts, this kid's not squeaky clean.
Not so much him personally. I have talked to his cousin before, but a lot of it is more big picture.
Right, exactly. Now, Seth, do you anticipate that the violence will pick up in the future, or that this thing will gradually calm down and fade away?
From the looks of it right now, these protests are not going away. As far as the violence is concerned, I can't speculate on that. It's really hard to kind of judge a crowd. I mean, we'll look at, you look at the difference between Monday and Tuesday. Monday, it got heated really quick because of confrontations, with police and just a large police presence there kind of blocking in protesters. So it got heated very quick, very early. Last night, it was peaceful all the way until essentially the end of the protest, when community leaders said, okay, let's go home. We're done for the night. We did our peaceful protest. Let's go home. And after that, when, the crowd kind of scattered is when things happened. So.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to talk a little bit, Seth, though, about the media. Have they been, in your mind, a help or a hindrance?
I think they've been a bit of both. Without the media there, this wouldn't be getting the coverage that it is, and it wouldn't be bringing the issues that the protesters do want at the forefront. They wouldn't be out there without the media. At the same time, I think it has become a little bit of a frenzy. I'm probably guilty of some of this myself even. And, it's kind of bedlam down there as well. And there's and even just from a logistical standpoint, you've got a large media area that's down there, sort of an accepted media zone, I guess you could call it. And last night, some of the what Captain Johnson calls agitators, ran into the media pen afterwards and were hiding there. So it's a really kind of a strange duality going on. It's almost, you need them, you might not want them, but you need them. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to really say.
Yeah, but you're sounding a little bit guilty about playing a role in it. What was your role? I mean, you're standing there, you're taking notes or taking pictures. What was your role?
I wouldn't say that I'm feeling guilty. I'd say maybe it's just kind of hard to, be down there in the cut and everything like that, and, not be sending the pictures out and everything. And I think a lot of the residents are kind of tired of it being the media circus. They want to talk about the issues. And I think that a lot of people are seeing the violence and, things like that. And that's kind of what's going on. So.
Yeah, we saw reports earlier that the police, for instance, had used tear gas firing at an Al Jazeera broadcast. This is a couple of days ago still. Mm-hmm. How has your treatment been from the police, for instance?
I mean, it's really ranged. I've had police be really nice and smile, and they don't mind when I take a picture. I've been tear gassed myself twice. That could be my own fault from where I was standing. I won't say they targeted me by any stretch. And then last night we had the entire police force kind of charging. I don't want to say charging media, but lining up and pushing media along. And I heard some of the officers say, "Oh, if I had a camera, I'd be media too," and I guess, for lack of a better term, berating kind of the media because we were there taking pictures and taking video and taking notes and talking to people. So it's really been a wide range. It almost goes hand in hand with the protests. You've seen a wide range from peaceful protest to violence. And you've seen a lot of a wide range of how the media has been treated, from very cordial to just contempt almost.
Wow. It's pretty early in the day there, but do they start assembling at this point? And is there passive protest going on right now, for instance?
I have not been down to Florissant yet, so I do not know if protest was going on. I know that there were community leaders and some law enforcement, some of the teachers, because the schools are not in. They are out for the week. They were down there cleaning up, some of the bottles and things like that. I have not heard anything about protests going on. I know there was supposed to be a protest at the Justice Center where the prosecutor, Bob McCulloch, his office, there was supposed to be a protest down there at 9 a.m. The protests usually start around noon, 1. You've got people out there fairly early, a smaller crowd, but definitely there.
Okay. Seth, well, take care of yourself. Be safe.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Seth.